You are listening to Fantha Tracks.
Because of the following special program, Wonder Woman and the Incredible Hulk will not be presented this evening.
I got Fantha.
It's time to get all your Star Wars news in a single file.
That doesn't sound too hard.
Boom! This is Making Tracks.
This is the way.
Here are your hosts, Mark Newbold and Mark Mulcaster.
I know these people. They are brutal. Does this look Jedi to you?
That's not how the Force works.
They'll never see it coming.
Count me in.
Mr. Back.
Hello again, room. Festival of the Force here with Brian Herring. Brian, how you doing?
I'm all right if you like that sort of thing. How are you?
I'm good.
Are we all right? Are we having a lovely day? Oh, come on, I know you're out there. I can hear you breathing. Are we having a lovely day? Hey, well done.
Not many empty seats, which I like.
That's nice.
How's the day treating you so far?
It's very nice. This is my second Festival of the Force. And, it's as nice as the first one. There's lots of lovely people out there all coming by and having a chat.
I asked Paul Blake a minute ago whether he'd ever done a show in York, and he didn't think he had. Have you?
I think I may have done a little while ago. I think I did one of the Monopoly ones, one of their smaller regional shows a little while ago. But I don't remember. A lot of them blur into one.
I was going to say, I mean, you get out around. I mean, obviously you're working in the industry and you're doing stuff there, but then when you get the opportunity, you go. I know you were in France recently, you were in Belgium recently.
Yes. I do all the international ones, you see. No, it's nice. It's nice, always nice to come out. And I used to come along to these before I started attending these. So I love a Comic-Con, and I particularly like a Star Wars Comic-Con. So I get it.
Where did your Star Wars journey start? What was the thing that got you hooked from the beginning?
1977, Christmas. My dad took me and my brother to see it in Harlow, and my life was never quite the same. It was, I was obsessed. I was that kid. I was 7 years old, saw the first one. I think I slept through the last 20 minutes because I was tiny and we had to go to a late show because we had to queue up to get in. There was none of this pre-booking malarkey. And I was just obsessed, as I said. You know, I mean, this shirt looks like the curtains I had as a kid. So I had the curtains and the bedspread and the slippers and the toy. I've still got all my toys. I had a school report go home when I was 10 that said Brian's obsession with Star Wars will lead him nowhere and he should concentrate on his academic studies, which was good advice but turned out not to be true. So I was absolutely obsessed with it from day one. And I knew about the editors and who the Ralph McQuarrie was and who, you know, Kenny Baker and Anthony Daniels were and all the stuff. And just kind of was just absolutely full on. Yeah.
By the way, kids work hard at school. We're not saying don't.
Yeah. Oh, goodness gracious! Yeah, don't pay any attention to that. But so I've always been a fan.
So when you get into the industry, and we'll come back to that in a minute. But when you get into the industry and you do all the things you've done, you get to the point where you're at the level where you're on the radar of the kind of people who are pulling together a Star Wars project, and then you get the call.
Well, yeah. I mean, the call. It was weird because I made the call, which was strange because I made it by accident. I'd been working in the industry. I started on Spitting Image in 1992, and I'd kind of kept working in television and the occasional sort of dipped into film occasionally. And one of the films I did was a thing called Prometheus, which was the Ridley Scott Alien prequel. And I worked with a gentleman called Neil Scanlon. Now, Neil won an Oscar some years ago for a film called Babe, the thing about the little pig. And Neil originally worked at the Jim Henson Creature Shop, and then he went independent. And then I wound up speaking to Neil after Prometheus because I was looking for somebody's phone number, and he called me. Neil, I'd left a message, and Neil was out on his tractor. He has a farm, and he called me back, and we were just chatting about the industry. And I hadn't been particularly busy at that point. This was about 2012, I think, just after 2012. I'd done the Olympic opening ceremony, and it had all gone a bit quiet after that. And I was bemoaning the state of the industry, and I said to Neil, and I knew Star Wars was coming back, but no one knew who was doing it. And I said, and now we've got to find out who's got Star Wars and kick their door in. And Neil said, well, don't do that, because I like the door where it is. And I'm like, I didn't realise it was you, I didn't mean to. He said, don't worry, I'll find you something. And then he called me back about half an hour later, asked me a couple of questions, And I obviously answered them correctly because he then hired me as the puppetry advisor and consultant for The Force Awakens. It was just called 7 at that point. And so I was on that film for 16 months. So I had almost a year before we started filming. So I was responsible for working with the designers and the fabricators and the set people on how you can put people into creature costumes, how we would do the puppets. I had helped to cast a lot of the people who then became kind of the repertory company within the creature department, the people who you see the same names come up on the end of things like Andor and the Acolyte now and all the movies. We keep using the same people because they're good at it, and we bring new people in all the time as well. But that was my gig, and so and then I was there doing a lot of R&D for Maz Kanata as a puppet.
Right.
And then that went digital, but this little round thing appeared. The design started coming in for that. And I thought, well, that looks nice. And I did a few tests for JJ with it, with a little model version. And then it happened, and now I'm sitting here talking to you.
It must be really unique for somebody with your skills and what you do to go onto a project and not, I'm going to say just that demeans the process, but to do so much more than performing it, to be involved in helping other people come on board, to help design the things.
Yeah, it was quite a thing. I mean, I would have just loved to have done a week on it. You know, I almost worked on a Phantom Menace when it was in London. My friend Phil Eason, who sadly died a few years ago, he did the Yaddle puppet in the first movie in the Jedi Council. And he said, I want you to come and be the other arm, but they wouldn't spring for the extra puppeteer. So that never happened. And I'm like, I've missed a Star Wars thing, you know. And then when I got involved in The Force Awakens, I thought, well, if I can get an action figure out of this, I might be able to go to Comic-Con. That'll be good. And I was originally supposed to be Sarko Plank, which was one of the original lineup of the action figures, and they scanned that. That's me. That body is me. I didn't do it in the film, but that was that costume and everything was made for me. And then BB-8 appeared, so I was really very much part of the sort of the boots on the ground for that first one, and it was lovely trying to work out how to do things, and you're watching what then became very, very famous characters just develop in front of you, and you had a little hand in helping that along.
Well, it's interesting you say that like BB-8 comes into the story almost after you're already on set.
Yes.
So you must have helped nurture the profile of BB-8, obviously the design. But was he always integral? Was he always a key character, even if you didn't know he was a ball with you know what I mean?
Yeah, it was. I mean, we didn't know how integral he was, because I didn't do this on my own. I'm part of a very large group of people who work for Neil over at the Creature Shop, at the Creature Cantina now, as it's now known. So when I first joined that team, there were 7 of us in the Creature department. By the time that film finished, there were 128. And that's all kinds of people. That's hair punchers, fine artists, designers, draftsmen, mould makers, engineers. I mean, there's so people that weld. You know, there's so many different skill sets involved in the Creature department. But BB-8 started. It was myself and Josh Lee, and Josh was the engineer. He's BB-8's dad, and so we started doing some very early little developments for it. And then Matt Denton, who's the head animatronics programmer there, he was brought in as well. And then Dave Chapman joined us, who's a second puppeteer. And Dave and I have been working together for years. Some of you might remember Dave as Otis the Aardvark from CBBC. But Dave also does the voice for, and he's a puppeteer for B2 EMO in Andor. So we were working on this droid. And we knew it was in the film, and then people go, oh yeah, it's like the new R2-D2, but we didn't quite know how much it was in the film until we did the final tests for JJ and Kathleen, and they loved it, and JJ asked me some questions about how it does this and how it does that, and Dave and I had really done our homework on it. We'd spent time working out how BB-8 boots up, how he shuts down, what he does, you know, what everything does, just for our own amusement, because we're making a new Star Wars character. This is pretty cool. So Dave and I just such Star Wars geeks that we really kind of dug into it. And then JJ said, I love what you're doing, love the way you're puppeteering it. Go read the script you're in the movie, because they could have just hired 2 other guys. Yeah. And so Dave and I got sent off to the Manor House at Pinewood, where they took our phones off us, and they went to the office, and they pulled out these 2. They went into the safe, and they took these 2.
Was that the black and red scripts?
The black and red scripts. So the black, you had a black cover and red pages, so you couldn't photocopy it. They took our phones away and they sent us in a room with a security guard, and we sat down and we went, page 1, Star Wars Episode 7. Page 2, a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. And Dave and I suddenly had a moment where we suddenly realised we were reading the first new Star Wars film. And we read the thing, and we realised this thing wasn't, BB-8 wasn't just in it. It was in all of it. And we're like, oh, we better not mess this up. Because I've done a lot of stuff over the years where you just kind of, you see it and it goes away. But we realised that everybody was going to go and see this film, and everybody was going to have an opinion on it. So that was the point we sort of, not panicked, but we went, oh, if we mess this up, we could be Jar Jar Binks all over again. And, you know, and I happen to like Jar Jar Binks, by the way. But so we had a real responsibility, and we probably put more, I know we put more pressure, I definitely put more pressure on myself than JJ or Neil or anybody put on me to get it right. Because I wanted BB-8 to be able to stand in a lineup, like a Usual Suspects lineup, with Chewbacca and Yoda and R2-D2 and C-3PO, and be part of the same story.
Because you were that kid that was into it in 77.
Yeah,
and,
completely. I wanted a 3.5-inch scale, you know, in a bubble pack. You know, I wanted that. I wanted I've got a Star Wars figure. You know, so it was really important to us that we got it right. And we didn't really know if it had worked or not until, well, the trailer came out and everybody went, oh, that's all digital.
Yeah.
Oh, Disney have made a toy commercial.
Yeah.
And then the second trailer came out and people went, oh, that's kind of interesting. Then the film came out and everyone went, we love that. Oh, they rolled the red carpet one out at Anaheim. Now, the red carpet version of BB-8 that you see go to the premieres wasn't used in the movies. That was made by Matt and Josh for premieres. And it's brilliant at a premiere. It goes at a nice walking pace. It loves a flat red carpet, but it has a little bit of trouble on rough terrain, and it can't run through the desert like I can in a green suit. So every different version of BB-8 is used for a certain thing. What was the question, Mark?
I can't remember.
No, either can I.
So when you're in the team, you're in the thick of it, and you're working with all these fellow, like, brilliant minds, bringing different aspects of BB-8 to life, because there's not, like you say, there's a hero BB-8, but he can't do the thing that the one that you ran around with, or the one that Matt designed, or whatever it might be. So how interesting is it to be part of a team that's crafting this, what we see as one fully realised creature?
Well, it was a fascinating process because they came up with ways of doing these things. You know, we'll put some wheels on the back and it will push it along. But again, when it gets bumpy, that one has a bit of trouble. And so there was different horses for different courses. So we worked out, Dave and I had 2 weeks in a soundstage on our own with the puppets. So Matt would come in, fire them all up for us. Yeah. If we had any problems, we'd call him, he'd come down and get down and fix whatever we needed doing. So we worked out what it was good at, what it wasn't good at, and we worked out a vocabulary of movement for it. So there's all sorts of little bits and pieces about BB-8 that you may or may not have noticed. He never stops moving. His body's always moving left and right, and that actually gives him breath. Now, why would a robot need breath? It doesn't. However, when puppets sit still, they die. So it's always got to be alive and doing stuff. So even if it's just the head is twitching slightly and just turning, and you just have to know when to do that and how often to do it, because if you do it too often, it just becomes annoying. So it was a case of how big do the movements need to be as well. How, you know, when it moves about, how much do you do? And Dave Chapman always says, what's it going to look like when it's the size of a double-decker bus in Leicester Square? So when it's on a great big IMAX screen. If it's moving too much, it kind of makes you feel sick watching it. So you have to really kind of work out.
That's an interesting point.
What the scale's going to be when it's big, and also when it's little. So you kind of have to work. We worked out if it could go downstairs. Then we decided it couldn't, because the normal stairs, its body's too big. So they said, don't worry, you've never got to do stairs. Until we had to do stairs. When Daisy goes down, when Ray goes down into them, finds the lightsaber. Luckily, the stairs were nice and wide, so we had to improvise very, very quickly. How does BB-8 go downstairs? So I decided that stairs are his enemy. He hates stairs because he's round, so he'd just be down. But also, if you look at it, he goes down the stairs like a toddler, bum shuffling down. He goes down each one, he checks the step, and then he just rolls his bum down, and then he checks the step again, and he rolls his bum down. And he's doing it in the background. And we had to do that a lot, and it got very heavy and very hot. But that's all part of the fun.
Hi, it's Tom Wilton, and you're listening to Fantha Tracks.
Do you think people would be surprised if they realised how much... If you were left in the film in the green suit and you were there present throughout the whole thing, do you think people would be surprised how much you would be in it? If that makes
they'd be
sense?
amazed, absolutely amazed. Yeah, especially in the desert. Just running around on sand. It was hell. But he's in it a lot. I mean, that whole scene with the thumbs up scene that everybody really liked. That was I'm 4 feet behind that at all times, and they just rubbed me out of it afterwards. We used the trike versions a little more in the Last Jedi. But by the time we got to Rise of Skywalker, JJ only wanted to use the puppet version on the rods.
Yeah.
He liked the performance because you could get quite a nuanced performance out of it. You can get very subtle movements. That's not to say that they're not all brilliant for what they are, but that particular one, he really, really liked using that one.
And when he's on set with you, directing you and everybody else, how... Do you get a sense that he's picking up on the nuances, you and Dave and everybody else, he's working on finessing? Do you think he's seeing it as a director going, I prefer that version to that version? He did that on the first movie. So he worked out very, very quickly which ones he liked using the most. Yeah.
There are versions where you just have to use a trike because you can't... There's so much going on behind BB-8 that you would have to replace so much stuff if there was a big man in a green suit. I'd say big man, a big fella in a green suit. You can't... if there's an explosion, then you'll use a digital version of BB-8 because it's easier to put a digital droid in front of a real explosion than it is to rebuild the explosion digitally to get rid of me.
Yeah.
And it's also not cost effective because you can just blow something up and it's blown up. So you just do that and then just put the droid in front. But, there is a lot of... Especially the Rise of Skywalker, all over it. Yeah, there's so many... and with Dio as well, with Robin, with Dio.
Yeah, we just spoke to Lynn about Dio.
Yeah.
So you're part of that process then? Because it does feel like a process from design to performance and all the way through. Was there ever a moment where JJ or Ryan might say... I think we should go this way, and you as a performer and Dave and everybody else go, actually it might work better as this?
There have been times, I mean, especially with Rise of Skywalker, we were going, there was a version called the Wiggler, which was on a plate, and it would just, the body would spin, and it would rock and round, but it wouldn't roll anywhere, it would just wiggle, and you'd just do this. And there were times we said, well, we'd be better off putting the Wiggler, and JJ would go like, no, I want the puppet. Just because he liked it, and the visual effects guys going, we've got to get rid of Brian again, But that was it. But you talk this stuff through. It was interesting. The jump between Force Awakens and Rise of Skywalker was because JJ hadn't done a lot of that kind of creature work before. He'd had some experience working with guys in suits and stuff. But so I suppose the easiest way to explain it is on Force Awakens he would say, "Can you bring it in, stop, look down, say something, turn and leave?" By the time we got to Rise of Skywalker, he'd just go, "Come in, look down, turn, leave, go." And actually do something else in the middle and, juggle. So he just trusted it as something that was in his film rather than an effect he had to deal with. Every time you get a new director who's not particularly used to working with creatures and droids or whatever, there's sort of a certain audition period where they don't trust it. Yeah. They know that they've got Neil's team and that they've got some of the best there are. Yeah. But they're still kind of, I've made visual effects films and I could do that later. But then once they realise they can actually get a performance there and then, and they can direct that performance and change that performance according to how it works within the scene, they really warm up to it. So you have to kind of prove yourself, but then once you're in, you're fine.
So when all that pre-production stuff, all that working out the kinks of the character, knowing how he boots up, all the little things, that's probably more valuable than even you guys realised when you were doing it.
Well, yeah, you go and get a lot of rehearsal. That's, because you don't have time, because these things are very expensive to make. Yeah. You've only got, a certain amount of daylight to get stuff shot in. So we didn't get a lot of rehearsal, but Dave and I had our rehearsal. And Dave and I have known each other for a very, very long time, so we have a pretty good shorthand. And so we had this kind of hand signal that we would do, and so we would work very, very quickly. So that was our rehearsal. It would be a blocking rehearsal, and then the crew would come and look at it, and you just get on with it. So you don't get a lot of time. So luckily we had that process to work out what it did well and how it looked on camera.
it always seemed to me Anthony Daniels took a long time, and this might not be true, but it always felt like it took a long time for him to warm to 3PO, to accept that I'm that guy, I'm C-3PO, I'm the guy in the suit, he belongs to me in many senses, and there was that warming up of the actor and the character. How long did it take you to feel that way about BB-8?
About 20 minutes. No, it was... I don't know. It was a weird thing because Anthony's in the suit. It's Anthony moving. I'm one step away from that, and say Dave is the other side of a monitor. Matt's at the other end of a remote control. So it's kind of BB-8 is a culmination of a lot of people. Jake Lunt, Christian Holtzman. It's kind of a big thing that it doesn't. I have a certain amount of ownership over it, and I've got a lot of affection for it, but it's not mine.
No.
You're
associated with it, but
I'm associated with it because I've done a load of these, But there are. It's a big team thing. I absolutely adore it. I mean, it was a dream come true for me. And people say, "What's the favourite thing you've ever puppet?" And before they finish the sentence, you just say BB-8.
Yeah.
Because it's brilliant. It's just such a lovely thing, and it meant so much to me to do it as part of, being part of Star Wars finally.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's. I'm fully aware that there is a big team of people that worked on it.
And he's not the only thing you've done. How many characters in Star Wars? And now including... we have not spoke about this for a little bit. Including Andor now, because your name's in all the credits of Andor.
I suppose now, with Andor was probably about another 6 or 7 things. I did a couple of things on the Acolyte. So probably nearly 70.
Yeah.
I've been involved with, not necessarily performed on the camera, but things like Babu Frick. I set up the sort of the way Babu Frick worked. I worked with the guys who did that really early on, and I was supposed to do it, but then it was rapidly becoming obvious that BB-8 and Babu Frick were going to play at the same time.
Yeah.
So I handed that off to Damien. So Porgs, Fathiers, there's a character called Hiran Biring, which if you mix the letters up there, you'll come up with a very familiar name. And that was in Solo, and then that appeared in Andor.
Yeah.
I'm checking out of a hotel.
Yeah.
When if you see it again, when Cassian disguises himself as the fashion designer, and he checks into that hotel, I'm checking out. I sweep out in a cape with this kind of parrot-headed weird thing on my face. Blinken, you will miss it. What else? I was in it. I was in The Last Jedi. I'm screaming orders in the trenches at Crate. Just loads of stuff. The Carillion Hounds, Lady Proxima. There was a few of us swimming about in that weird little pond with Proxima. Loads of stuff, and it's been really sort of Mon Calamaris, and every time you go, I did that.
Have you got a
fun.
checklist now? I'm kind of thinking you've named so many different sort of species in Star Wars. It feels like you could almost go through the toy catalogue from 1984 and go, done that.
Yeah, I mean, not necessarily the 1984 stuff, but it's weird when you go through the visual dictionaries. Yeah. You go, no, I did that one. So that's quite fun. It's very sort of weird when you see stuff. When you see toys of stuff you've done, that is really strange. Or when you see, like today, there's kids with BB-8 T-shirts on, and I see them in the street all the time as well. And you sort of see them go, I did that. But they'll never know, why would they?
And looking forward, without giving anything away, because you can't, because the snipers are out, is there or are there things in the future that you're thinking, okay, BB-8 is a landmark character and he connected in a way that so many characters don't, because he was felt like a zeitgeist thing, like Grogu was and the Hulkbuster was and such. Yep. Are there any characters in your future that you know about that you think, that might just catch on?
I've no idea. I don't know. I never know what's in the future.
You did Beetlejuice.
I did the baby in Beetlejuice 2, which was like an absolute hoot. We had a lot of fun doing that. That was a very, very weird week. Just climbing sort of blood-stained babies up walls of hospitals while Winona Ryder just stares at you through a glass window. It's a very odd day, that was. But yeah, you don't quite know what's coming, and that's. I mean, I was very strongly considering giving up the business in 2013.
Yeah.
And then I spoke to Neil Scanlon, and here I am speaking to you now. So you never know. That's the bad thing and the great thing about this business is you don't know what's around the corner.
Is that part of the excitement?
Kind of, but you hit a certain age and you just wish, I wish I knew where I was working next month.
That's brilliant. Can we have a big round of applause for Brian, please?
Cheers, guys. If you've got any more questions, I'm out there with a big picture of my face behind me. Nice to see you. Take care.
For everything in one location, Daily news, reviews, interviews, podcasts, video, and social media feeds. Bookmark FanthaTracks.com for Star Wars news 24/7, 365.
There's somebody in the room.
How are you?
I'm all right. Yes, not bad. Thank you.
I've asked a couple of people, and I wish I'd asked the first couple of people the same question. Have you ever done a convention in New York before?
Yes, I did one at the race course. I think it was a couple of years ago. People tell me. I like York, though. It's pretty. It's a very handsome place, isn't it, York? I've only seen the Premier Inn over the road, actually, but this time. But I gather York is. I remember it being very, very beautiful.
And in your adventures in acting, was it a place that ever was on the circuit that you'd performed at before?
The theatre, the Rep here was wonderful. I haven't actually played here, but I did a heck of a lot of work in my early days at Leeds. It used to be called Leeds Playhouse, for obvious reasons. And then it became the West Yorkshire Playhouse when they built a new one. And I loved it there. And I met lots of lovely people. And the mother of my son Gus I met in Leeds. So I've got a lot to be thankful for to Yorkshire. Yeah, love it.
So when you're an actor, when you're travelling around, especially when you're doing theatre, does a location, I asked this of Hugh Spite earlier, when you go back to a place you've performed in before, and it evokes memories, and some rooms are better than other rooms, do you feel that as an actor, when you're on the stage, you're in a certain theatre, and then you move down the road to the next theatre or the next town or whatever it might be, do you kind of know when it's a good room?
Yeah, I think you do, don't you? I mean, my favourite theatre to work in is the Swan Theatre, which is in Stratford-on-Avon, the Royal Shakespeare Company, which is the smallest stage. It's a thrust stage, a bit like the Globe, the old Shakespeare Theatre would have been. Not like the Globe in London, not a direct sort of copy, but similar. And that's a fantastic space to be in. I like the National Theatre's a lovely place to be as well. But yes, you do get a feeling for a place. Well, it's like going to I've never got on particularly with Manchester or Edinburgh. See? I don't know why. I don't feel happy there.
Okay.
In Manchester or Edinburgh, but I do in Leeds and York and Oxford, and you know what I mean. You have places that you feel better in than others, don't you?
They've just not had their moment yet.
Oh, I've given them the benefit of my considerable company, Manchester and Edinburgh, and they can cock off.
There you go. It's the quote of the day. So when you were a younger actor, what was it that got you into acting? What was it that grabbed you? Was there a performance you saw? Was it just something you felt in your bones? Where did it all start?
Actually, I take that back about Manchester. I've suddenly remembered. I filmed.
Retconning now.
I loved when I filmed. My first ever television was a thing called Young Sherlock, and I was him. I was young Sherlock Holmes. And that was Granada TV, and that was Manchester, of course. And that was a wonderful television company. And I remember the lady Jean Alexander, who played Hilda Ogden in Coronation Street, which of course is made up there. And we had a very tipsy night in the Midland Hotel in the bar telling jokes. She was fantastic fun. So I take that all back about Manchester. I'm still not that keen on Edinburgh. Anyway, what was the question? Sorry.
Oh, what was the question? What was there a performance? Was there a moment? What was it that just sort of caught your fancy to think acting is the life for me?
I don't know. My father was an actor, and he became a straight man to comedians. Some of you might remember Charlie Drake, who was a very funny little comedian. Hello, my darlings. And he was my godfather. And
wow.
People, Al Reed was a very funny man. And my mum was looking at the ballerinas on the wall there, my mother was a ballet dancer in the Royal Opera Ballet, and then she moved over to the darker side of variety. So she was in the Benny Hill show, and my dad was in the Charlie Drake show in the same town, Great Yarmouth, and so they met. So I sort of came from a theatre background, but my dad stopped acting when my mum was ill, and the comedian in the 60s, she got better, thankfully, still with us. But I was a little toddler. I was little, small, well, for a short period of my life. Short period,
yeah.
That's good. Anyway, so he took time off from being in the theatre to look after my mum and me down in the south coast, where I now live again. Then the comedian he was working with unfortunately passed away, so he had to make the difficult choice: do I stay in? We'd been working as an estate agent, so do I stay in business and stay at home, or do I go off and try and hitch myself to another star, and he decided to stay in business and property and things like that. I sometimes think he'd have been a happier person if he'd still followed his heart and stayed in the theatre. Peter O'Toole was my great hero. There were several of his films shown on the television, because in those days, of course, in the 70s, you couldn't. It was even before blockbuster video shops and things like that. You relied. There were no films on any other outlet other than the cinema or your television screen, as chosen by the BBC or ITV. So, yeah. And they showed in quite rapid succession several of Peter O'Toole's wonderful films: The Lion in Winter and Country Dance, a strange film, and Goodbye, Mr. Chips, which was lovely. So I've thought he was fantastic. And I sort of wanted to be an actor because of him, really.
Just something you say just strikes a chord with me, because back in the day, like you say, you either went to the cinema or you caught it on telly, and if you didn't catch it, tough luck, because nobody had video recorders. So it made a movie star so much less accessible, but by extension so much more... not important, that's not the right word, but it felt like a bigger thing to be a Richard Burton or somebody like that. There was a thing that went with that. Do you think it's better now that actors' work is more available? Do you think it's lost its mystique? It doesn't feel like there's mega star actors these days in the sense that there used to be back in the day.
I think it's very tempting to look back, as we all do, and think things were rosier. But I mean, certainly the characters like Burton, O'Toole, Richard Harris, who was the original Dumbledore, of course, fantastic in Harry Potter's. Anyway, all those, they were larger-than-life characters and actors. Not everyone was like them. I don't know. I think there are still huge stars out there, aren't there? But certainly there is so much access to people nowadays through the social media, aren't there? So there's not much privacy going on, mystique is a better word.
Yeah, that's the word I was looking for, mystique, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not on social media myself, because I'd only say all the wrong things and get cancelled. I mean, not necessarily, but I might. I mean, I don't know what I wouldn't like to... It's very, very odd world, I think. I think it's very good for some people. When my friend Scott, his mum was very ill and he was looking after her... up in Newcastle, and all his friends down south, he missed and everything. And of course, so sort of chatting on social media and things gave him great support and comfort. But it can also be a dreadful trolling thing, can't it?
You're better off out of it, guaranteed.
I don't want to be on it. No.
Leave it alone.
Yeah.
When you look back at your career so far to this point, because there's loads of great stuff coming up, obviously, but when you look back and go, that was the moment where either I, as an actor, I felt like I just got it to what I do. I felt like that's where it clicked. And also above and beyond that, moving forward, the role that you think that's the one that really put me on the map.
There was a wonderful director, Declan Donnellan, ran a theatre company called Cheek by Jowl, and I took over as Feste in their wonderful production of Twelfth Night, a definitive production of that great play. And he really taught me a lot about acting. I was about 27 then, and that was hugely exciting. I loved playing various parts at Stratford. I mentioned earlier King John I loved playing, and Mosca in Volpone. They made me feel like a proper actor. I was good in those roles, and I thought, modestly. And on screen, I don't know. I think... Obviously, I'm quite well known for the character I played in Holby City for 11 years on and off, and I loved playing him. And the great thing about that character was he was my character. When you do Feste or Andrei Gucic or whatever in Shakespeare or all the classic plays, you know that part has been played 5 million times brilliantly by other people. And I'm not comparing Holby City to Shakespeare, but that character at least was mine, you know. And I'm very sorry that they cancelled it, because I'd still like to be playing him.
Yeah, they were
Mr. Hansen. They were great. But but that's one of the lovely things about coming to this setup. You just realise how much people love these films. They're great films. We're talking, you know, the Star Wars saga, Harry Potter, which I loved. They're all you know. But how fortunate to be a part of something like that.
It's interesting that you say Hansen, for example, was you and only you played that character, and you and only you could play that character, because you really that character went through so much in that time, and you're the face and the guy behind it. Conversely, with Rogue One, for example, you're succeeding a brilliant actor. I know you admired Peter Cushing immensely. So when you take on a role like that, and it's an actor that you've grown up with and watched, and you're studying his performance, because you want your performance to be not a million miles away from what Cushing did, but it's still Guy Henry as Grand Moff Tarkin in Rogue One. It's not Peter Cushing as that character. But when they put the two things together, of course, it's quite a process to do that. How different is that, in the sense that you do a Shakespeare role and you know somebody else has played that role before, and you're stepping into Tarkin and you know that Cushing has played it?
Yeah, well, I was genuinely a great fan of Peter Cushing, the actor who played Tarkin originally, obviously, and so it was very nerve-wracking. I was very daunted by the idea of not letting him down. Obviously, I didn't want to let the audience down either, but or Lucas and Disney and all those important people up there, you know, there either. But my main concern was that it should be a fitting tribute, in a way, to the late great Peter Cushing. I thought he was lovely actor, always had, and so that's what I concentrated on. But it was rather strange, because I'm not an impressionist or mimic, but Gareth Edwards felt that I was had a similar tone and style, whatever, that I could be their version of Tarkin in Rogue One, and I'm delighted I did. But it was because we went through various options. I mean, at one point I was wearing a wig and makeup. I don't. In the end, they did go 100% for the CGI digital look, which for its time I think was pretty successful. But you know, people. I did get rather miffed, though, with friends of mine who. People that I hadn't really talked to about it, because it was supposed to be secret. And I got when the film came out, I got lots of text messages. This is me trying to sound like Peter Cushing. I was trying to be him, you know. And I had all these people texting me saying, as soon as you opened his mouth, I knew it was you. I thought, don't say that. That's my impression of Peter Cushing. But it was a real thrill to do. Amazing. I'd like to have had another go, but they don't seem to have the bigger legacy characters, I think they call them, in Andor, really. And also, I don't think Tony Gilroy was my biggest fan. So, and also, I think if they did Tarkin again now, they probably would do it in with AI, or so probably wouldn't use the same system. I think. I don't know, but
it's interesting. I think when people were going through the season, and there was anticipation from people that, we were going to see Tarkin, we were going to see Darth Vader, we were going to see the Emperor, and actually you didn't see any of you, because your characters in Rogue One. The move from Andor to Rogue One it's almost like a thematic step up. Now you're the next level of boss character, if you like. You're the guy coming to take the Death Star from Krennic. So actually, weirdly, even though I would have loved to have seen you do it again, and I'm sure you would have loved to have done it again, from a story point of view, it kind of made sense. You're the guy coming in, taking the big toy from the bad guy in the TV series, and you're the bad guy in the movie, sort of thing. So it sort of made sense. I know that doesn't help you at all, but it sort of made sense in a thematic way.
Okay. I mean, I'm not a Star Wars buff by any means, and I haven't watched Andor at all, so I don't know. It would have been lovely to have had another go, actually, because I'd have felt more confident that it was the right ballpark area, and I would have loved to have had another go, but who knows, maybe one day.
Fantha Tracks. Voodoo!
I'm in Marie Antoinette at the moment.
I was going to say,
Yes.
what are you doing right now?
I'm not playing her, too tall for the role. I'm playing Vergennes, who was the right-hand man to Louis XVI, or one of them, and it's a lovely part, and that was great fun because, of course, we were filming in France, and it was gorgeous. It was great fun.
Do you enjoy getting around and hitting all these different locations when you're shooting stuff, or is there a comfort to filming near home?
Yeah, both. I mean, Edinburgh. No. In the long run, it would be great to have a great big, hugely well-paid series for Netflix or ITV or something that happened to be filmed in the New Forest where I live, because then I could be, comfy and live at home. But no, of course, it's fantastic to be able to go away. I mean, I've been to Finland. That's a funny place to go to, isn't it? I would never have been to Tokyo had it not been for face pulling. That's what my driver on Peter, who drove me on Rogue One, he said to me, he calls us face pullers, the actors, because, we're acting away, pulling faces. This is... and I was very depressed after one day's filming, and I got in the car and I said, "Oh, Peter, I really mucked it up. I don't think I was any good today at all." And he said, "You're number 9 on the cast list of the biggest movie in the world. Shut up. Stop moaning." So I didn't, probably.
He's a wise man. He's a very wise man.
Oh, yes.
Is there a role? Is there a role that you felt evaded you that's just not come to you yet? Is there something that you really would love to just get your teeth into? Is there one out there? A white whale?
I mean, I would have loved to have been able to play Richard II. I never got a chance to do that. I did an audition speech for drama school from Richard II. Although somebody did, because he never shuts up, Richard II. He's talky, he's the king, I think probably Richard II is only good for the person who is playing him. Yeah. It goes on and on. But I'm not suitable for the role, but I remember falling in love with the character of Cyrano de Bergerac. Sir Derek Jacobi played it so beautifully at the Royal Shakespeare Company, and I've never seen a play get a standing ovation at the interval. I mean, it was so moving and so brilliant. That would have been that's a great part, but I wouldn't be very suited to it, I think. I can't really think of anyone that... I'd like to play Mr. Hanson again. I wish the BBC would, or somebody would bring Holby back for a while. Not just for the money so I can pay the mortgage, but because I love playing that character. But no, I can't think of one I really long to play.
Do you think Hanson's the character of all the characters you played that you feel the most ownership of?
Yes, I think so. Yeah, he was great. And, but I mean, acting is a lovely thing to do because all you're doing, you're just telling stories, and people have since time began, people have loved sitting in the dark and being told a story. I'm proud to be an actor. I think it's a lovely thing to do.
And before I let you go, because I know you've got people waiting outside for you at the table, when you come to events like this, when you have the opportunity to talk to a room or talk to people at the table or share a story, is that an enjoyable aspect for you? Is that that communication thing? It's more direct with the TV audience there behind a screen. Same with the cinema. In the theatre, they're in front of you, but they're not necessarily interacting in that same way. But when you're at the table talking to somebody, it's that little one-on-one experience. Do you enjoy that?
It's really great. And, I mean, obviously, I don't usually get the ones who didn't like what I did. I get people being... hang on, don't form a queue now. Just because I've been rude about Edinburgh. But I mean, you get to hear about why people like things. And I mean, I did Dr. Terror years ago in the 1990s, I think, where he was a sort of monstrous character. It's on my table, a photograph of him, and he was a sort of acerbic host introducing the horror films on the BBC late night on Friday nights. And it was a funny character, odd, 5 hours of latex. There was no CGI digital stuff then. And, and somebody said today, "Oh, I loved him when I was a child. You introduced the horror films to me." So, you just hear these little snippets of what means things to people and what they've loved and why and that period's in their life, A lady said to me earlier that she started watching Holby when she was 4. which made me feel old, but I am. But no, it's lovely. Yeah, great one-to-one thing. But that is the thing about a theatre as opposed to cinema, of course, is that you are in the same room with live human beings. That's why theatre can be so fantastic. Can be really boring as well. But a good theatre experience, I think, is amazing.
Brilliant. Well, hopefully you've not found this bit of theatre boring at all. Can we have a round of applause for Guy, please?
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Email radio@fanthatracks.com. Head to links.fanthatracks.com for links to our social media feeds, Fantha Tracks TV and Fantha Tracks Radio. Thanks to James Semple for the Fantha Tracks intro, Blues Harvest for our Making Tracks opening music, and Mark Daniel and Vanessa Marshall for our voiceovers. New episodes drop Tuesdays and Fridays at 7 o'clock UK time. Our weekly news show, Good Morning Tatooine, goes live Sundays at 9 o'clock UK time on Facebook and YouTube. And remember, Fantha Tracks is absolutely free, so it costs nothing to stay updated on all the latest Star Wars news.
Coming up next on Fantha Tracks Radio, it's Start Your Engines.